Today, Live March 19, 2021. Live World News Headlines. U.S. shipped 22 million COVID-19 shots this week. White House. Atlanta shooting suspects church decries killings as wicked betrayal. After Georgia shootings, Biden urges fast action on COVID-19 hate crimes bill. After Georgia shootings, Biden urges fast action on COVID-19 hate crimes bill. Marine ecologist Lubchenco to lead climate in White House Science Office. Biden says he's proud of Secretary of State after confrontation with China. Pelosi says top Democrats won't back measure to expel Greene. Majority of New York voters say Cuomo should resign. 14 Republicans vote against resolution condemning Myanmar military coup. Atlanta shooting suspects church decries killings as wicked betrayal. Atlanta, the Baptist church where the suspect in this week's Atlanta area spa killings was a member, issued a statement on Friday decrying the attack as a wicked betrayal of faith and describing the 8 victims, including 6 women of Asian descent, as blameless. Robert Aaron Long, 21, has been charged with 8 counts of homicide in Tuesday's fatal shooting of 4 people at 2-day spas in Atlanta and 4 others at a massage parlor in Cherokee County, about 40 miles, 64 kilometers, north of the state capital. In a statement, the Crabapple First Baptist Church in Milton, Georgia, said Long's extreme and wicked act is nothing less than rebellion against our holy God and His Word. Investigators said Long had admitted carrying out the attacks, claiming he was driven by internal conflict over what he described as a sex addiction, not racial animus toward Asians. But the rampage has stirred fear among Asian Americans, who see the crimes as a part of a national surge in racially motivated attacks that has accelerated with the COVID-19 pandemic. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were due to visit Atlanta on Friday to offer support to Asian Americans and meet with leaders of the area's growing Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Authorities stress they have not ruled out charging Long with hate crimes, even though Long claims that racial bias was not his motivation. Aaron's actions are antithetical to everything that we believe and teach as a church. In the strongest possible terms, we condemn the actions of Aaron Long as well as his stated reasons for carrying out this wicked plan, said the church, where Long and his father were members. No blame can be placed upon the victims. A former roommate of Long's at a rehabilitation center said the suspect would feel shame and remorse after frequenting massage parlors for sex, then return to God. Fulton County officials on Thursday identified the 4 Atlanta victims as Soon C. Park, 74, Yoon J. Grant, 51, Suncha Kim, 69, and Young Aua, 63. All were of Korean descent, according to South Korea's consulate in Atlanta. The Cherokee County victims were identified by authorities as Delana Ashley Yan, 33, Paul Andre Michels, 54, Xiao Jie Yan, 49, and Dao Fang, 44. The Georgia killings have prompted police departments to step up patrols and visibility in Asian American communities around the country. Hate crimes against Asian Americans in 16 major cities rose 149% in 2020 over 2019, according to the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, a former Cherokee County Sheriff's Department spokesman who came under criticism for saying Long had a really bad day and who had previously promoted T-shirts blaming Asians for the pandemic has been reassigned, the New York Times reported. Captain Jay Baker, who was named as Director of Communications on the Sheriff's website, was replaced as by Erica Neldner, whose email signature identifies her as Communications Director. U.S. shipped 22 million COVID-19 shots this week, White House. A White House official on Friday said the U.S. government has distributed 22 million COVID-19 shots to locations across the United States this week, as it pushes to deliver enough vaccines for all Americans by the end of May. U.S. President Joe Biden has urged states to offer shots to all adults in May and said there will be enough doses for every adult who wants a shot by the end of that month. Jeff Zients, the White House's COVID-19 response coordinator, said the administration has delivered 1 million shots to community vaccination sites across the country, around 60% of which have been given to ethnic and racial minorities. The federal pharmacy program has allowed millions of Americans to get a shot in a local pharmacy, the same way they get their flu shot, Zients said on a Friday press call. The United States has shipped out more than 150 million shots and dosed nearly 120 million people, according to federal data. Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer Incorporated and Moderna Incorporated expect to deliver together 240 million COVID-19 shots to the United States by the end of March, and 800 million by midsummer. The Biden administration has urged states to make a push to get all teachers and childcare workers vaccinated by the end of March to assist with safe public school reopenings. Zients said that U.S. regulators are expected to take action on AstraZeneca plc's COVID-19 shot in the next several weeks. The White House plans to loan 4 million AstraZeneca shots that have already been produced in the United States to Canada and Mexico, Science said, adding that the loan will not interfere with promised deliveries to Americans. Reuters first reported the plans on Thursday. The British drug maker said it expects to have 30 million shots ready to be shipped around the United States by the beginning of April. After Georgia shootings, Biden urges fast action on COVID-19 hate crimes bill. Washington. Reuters. President Joe Biden on Friday called on U.S. lawmakers to quickly pass a COVID-19 hate crimes bill, saying while the motive was still unknown in this week's shooting in Georgia, the nation faced an ongoing crisis of gender-based and anti-Asian violence. It's time for Congress to codify and expand upon these actions, because every person in our nation deserves to live their lives with safety, dignity, and respect, he said in a statement released as the president headed to Atlanta to meet with Asian American leaders. After Georgia shootings, Biden urges fast action on COVID-19 hate crimes bill. Washington. President Joe Biden on Friday called on U.S. lawmakers to quickly pass a COVID-19 hate crimes bill, saying while the motive was still unknown in this week's shooting in Georgia, the nation faced an ongoing crisis of gender-based and anti-Asian violence. It's time for Congress to codify and expand upon these actions, because every person in our nation deserves to live their lives with safety, dignity, and respect, he said in a statement released as the president headed to Atlanta to meet with Asian American leaders. Marine ecologist Lubchenco to lead climate in White House Science Office. Washington. Jane Lubchenco, a marine ecologist with wide federal government experience, has joined the Biden administration to lead climate and environment efforts at the Office of Science and Technology Policy, the White House said on Friday. Lubchenco led the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, during the Obama-Biden administration, from 2009 to 2013, where among other things she dealt with the aftermath of the BP underwater oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico, one of the worst environmental disasters in U.S. history. After that, she was the State Department's first U.S. science envoy for the ocean. President Joe Biden has made tackling climate change a priority, in a reversal of former President Donald Trump's agenda of slashing regulations on fossil fuels and challenging mainstream climate science. Lubchenco, who has been a professor at Oregon State University, has long warned that rising carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere contribute to climate change and ocean acidification, which she has called an equally evil twin. She has testified in congressional hearings that acidification is altering the chemistry of the ocean, posing a threat to everything from corals, shellfish, and some plankton. In the newly created role, Lubchenco will be Deputy Director for Climate in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, connecting climate and environmental challenges with health, economic recovery, equity, and sustainability. The OSTP is responsible for the U.S. Global Change Research Program and the National Climate Assessment, among other things. Lubchenco will work with Eric Lander, a geneticist, who Biden nominated as OSTP Director. Biden elevated his post to cabinet-level status for the first time. A healthy environment and a stable climate are the key to both economic recovery and long-term prosperity that is equitable and just, Lubchenco said in a release. OSHA. Biden says he's proud of Secretary of State after confrontation with China. President Biden said Friday that he is proud of Secretary of State Antony Blinken after the top U.S. diplomat had confrontational encounter with Chinese officials a day earlier during a meeting in Alaska. "I'm very proud of the Secretary of State," Biden told reporters in brief remarks before departing for a trip to Atlanta. The president's remarks followed a testy start to the first high-level meeting between Biden administration officials and the Chinese in Anchorage. The opening statements from the officials, which were open to press, were notably sharp and adversarial for such talks. Blinken, a longtime foreign policy advisor to Biden, said that U.S. officials intended to raise their deep concerns with actions by China, including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, cyber attacks on the United States, and economic coercion toward our allies. Each of these actions threaten the rules-based order that maintains global stability. That's why they're not merely internal matters and why we feel an obligation to raise these issues here today, Blinken said. His remarks were not well received by the Chinese. Yang Jieqi, Foreign Affairs Director of the Chinese Communist Party, responded by questioning the status of U.S. democracy and suggesting the U.S. has its own human rights problems to deal with, citing the recent Black Lives Matter protests. Yang also took issue with the tone of the Americans. "Well, isn't this the intention of the United States, judging from what, or the way that you have made your opening remarks, that it wants to speak to China in a condescending way from a position of strength?" Yang said, according to a translation of his remarks. "I think we thought too well of the United States. We thought that the U.S. side will follow the necessary diplomatic protocols. So for China it was necessary that we made our position clear. Blinken and Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, are scheduled to hold further meetings with Yang and Chinese State Councilor Wang Yi in Anchorage on Friday, but Thursday's interactions suggested the meetings would be characterized by confrontation. Biden reacted to the developments as he left the White House on Friday morning for Atlanta, where he is touring Centers for Disease Control and Prevention headquarters and meeting with local Asian American community leaders after Tuesday evening's shooting spree in and around the city, which left 8 dead, including 6 Asian women. Blinken's remarks reflected Biden's approach of directly raising concerns with China's human rights and economic abuses and other aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific region. The Biden administration is also seeking to cooperate with China in areas of mutual concern, such as climate change and nuclear nonproliferation, though the tensions on display Thursday indicate that such cooperation may be difficult. The administration has sought to work in lockstep with U.S. allies to counter China, and Blinken met with officials in Japan and South Korea this week before traveling to Alaska. I said that the United States' relationship with China will be competitive where it should be, collaborative where it can be, adversarial where it must be, he said in his remarks in Anchorage. Our intent is to be direct about our concerns, direct about our priorities, with the goal of a more clear-eyed relationship between our countries moving forward. Pelosi says top Democrats won't back measure to expel Greene. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, said Friday that House Democratic leaders aren't backing a resolution to expel Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican Georgia, from Congress over past endorsements of political violence. The resolution, which Representative Jimmy Gomez, Democrat California, introduced earlier Friday, has 72 co-sponsors. But it would be a heavy lift for Gomez's effort to succeed, given that expulsion requires a 2/3 supermajority in the House. Pelosi indicated Gomez was free to introduce an expulsion resolution, but that Democrats shouldn't expect leadership to sign onto it. Members are very unhappy about what happened here, and they can express themselves the way they do. What Mr. Gomez did is his own view. And that is not the leadership position, Pelosi told reporters in the Capitol. 11 Republicans voted with Democrats last month to remove Greene from her assignments on the House Education and Labor Committee and the Budget Panel. While some Republicans have criticized Greene over her past embrace of conspiracy theories and endorsements of violence against Democrats, it's unlikely that enough Republicans would join with Democrats to reach the 2/3 threshold needed for expulsion. I believe some of my Republican colleagues, and one in particular, wish harm upon this legislative body. And I'm not saying this for shock value. It's the conclusion I drew after a member of Congress advocated violence against our peers, the Speaker and our government, Gomez said on the House floor on Friday morning. Only 5 members have been expelled in the House's history. Greene has acknowledged that she previously believed in the baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, which she has since disavowed. The GOP lawmaker also distanced herself from past statements suggesting that school shootings and the 9/11 terrorist acts were staged. But when the House voted in February to boot her from committees, Greene did not directly address her past indications of support for violence against Democrats, including Pelosi, former President Obama and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Greene previously liked a Facebook comment in January 2019 that said a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove Pelosi, and when a Facebook commenter asked her in April 2018, "Now do we get to hang them?" Referring to Clinton and Obama, Greene responded, "Stage is being set. Players are being put in place. We must be patient. This must be done perfectly or liberal judges would let them off." Greene further posted an image on Facebook last September of herself, holding a gun next to pictures of progressive Reps. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, NY, Ilhan Omar, Minnesota, and Rashida Tlaib, Michigan, with the caption "Squad's worst nightmare." Facebook later removed the post for violating its policies. Majority of New York voters say Cuomo should resign. A majority of likely New York voters believe that Governor Andrew Cuomo, D., should resign, indicating declining support for the elected official as he faces a series of controversies and growing calls to step down, according to a poll released Friday from left-leaning think tank Data for Progress. The survey, conducted from March 13 to March 16 and shared exclusively with New York news organization City and State, found that 58% of 484 likely voters believed Cuomo should step down when they were given context about the allegations against him. Additionally, just 15% of likely voters surveyed said they would vote to re-elect the governor for a historic 4th term, with just 18% of Democrats indicating their support. In New York, which has no limits on the number of consecutive terms a governor can serve, Cuomo faces a 2022 re-election. However, His future appears increasingly uncertain amid a series of scandals facing his administration, including sexual harassment allegations and his office's admission that it intentionally withheld data on the coronavirus death toll in New York nursing homes. In terms of Cuomo's job approval rating, about 41% of respondents in Friday's poll said they either strongly or somewhat approved of the Democrats' overall performance. The poll, which was conducted online and reported a margin of error of 4 percentage points, paints a more negative picture for Cuomo than Thursday's Quinnipiac University poll that found that 43% of registered New York voters believe the governor should resign, while 49% said he should remain in office. Quinnipiac's poll, conducted March 16 to 17, reported a margin of error of 3.3 percentage points. While positions on Cuomo's political future remain mixed among New York voters, other elected officials, including top New York lawmakers, have called on him to resign, arguing that he is no longer fit to lead the Empire State. Following criticism of his handling of the coronavirus pandemic and the level of transparency on the death toll in the state, multiple former aides to Cuomo and other women have come forward with allegations of sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior against him. In one of the latest accusations, a former aide said Cuomo once groped her while she was at the governor's mansion. While Cuomo has apologized for his actions, acknowledging that some of his interactions may have been insensitive or too personal, he denied that he ever inappropriately touched anyone. Leaders of the New York State Assembly on Wednesday announced that a Manhattan law firm, Davis Polk & Wardwell LLP, will lead the impeachment investigation surrounding the harassment and nursing home allegations against Cuomo. The governor also faces a separate investigation by New York Attorney General Letitia James, D., who is specifically looking into the accusations from various women who have come forward in recent weeks. 14 Republicans vote against resolution condemning Myanmar military coup. More than a dozen House Republicans voted Friday against a resolution condemning the military coup in Myanmar amid concerns over some of its language, drawing pushback from Democrats. A House Democratic aide told The Hill that Republicans had raised concerns over a section of the resolution regarding election integrity, but Democrats refused to strip the language. The measure ultimately passed the House in a broad 398-14 vote, condemning Myanmar's military junta for overthrowing the country's civilian government in a February 1 takeover. The GOP lawmakers who voted against the legislation were Reps. Andy Biggs, Arizona; Lauren Boebert, Colorado; Ken Buck, Colorado; Ted Budd, NC; Matt Gaetz, Florida; Marjorie Taylor Greene, Georgia; Andy Harris, MD; Jody Isay, Georgia; Thomas Massey, KY; Mary Miller Ill, Alex Mooney, W. Virginia; Barry Moore, Alabama; Scott Perry, PA; and Chip Roy, Texas. Biggs in a video statement Friday condemned the violence in Myanmar but emphasized that we can't simply be the military police for the entire world. When we do that, that's how we end up in Afghanistan for 20 years, that's how we end up having military personnel in over 100 nations, he said. The resolutions won't stop the military junta. The Democratic aide said House Republicans had raised concerns over language in the resolution referencing election integrity. Members of Myanmar's ruling party, the National League for Democracy, NLD, were deposed last month, with the military claiming that last year's general election was invalid. Whereas the Tatmadaw Myanmar military claimed they had evidence of parliamentary election fraud perpetrated by the NLD and Burma's Union Election Commission. An allegation that contradicted the judgment of several independent election monitoring organizations that the electoral process and outcome were credible despite minor irregularities, the House resolution states. Representative Andy Levin, Democrat, Michigan, the sponsor of the measure, expressed disbelief after the vote that some conservatives would object to language deeming Myanmar's election legitimate. He said that with the blessing of House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, EMD, Democrats declined to strip the provision out, forcing Friday's vote on a bill Democrats had hoped would skate through the House. I don't mean to be naive, but this idea that we can't say that our own election was legitimate, and we can't talk about elections around the world because it reflects back on our own, Levin said. There are still democracies hanging on by a thread in this world. The vote comes as Myanmar's military bats down pro-democracy protests with increasing force. At least 224 protesters have been killed and at least 2,258 people were arrested, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. The House resolution specifically calls on the junta to release Myanmar's civilian leaders from detention and allow elected officials to return to their seats in parliament. Don't forget to comment below with your common sense and subscribe to your podcast. This helps bring the podcast to life and grow it. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We can't wait to continue this adventure with you. Support us on PayPal. Thank you very much and enjoy listening.